So welcome to everybody, good morning. First of all, I would like to thank very much Maria and Sofia that are somewhere in the back. When we participated some years ago to the first Spain startup, it was small, teeny, maybe confidential, and now we are here in Las Ventas. I think the venue is also an amazing place, probably a unique place in the world to organize this type of startup event. And I want to thank very much Maria and Sofia, all the team that have been setting up this amazing venue and the 2-3 days. Welcome also the foreigners that will be with us. I will be doing a very brief introduction. So I've been asked no more than 3, 4, 5 minutes. And after we will have more conversation, I will start with the ladies and we will continue with the gentlemen on that side. The introduction is just to share 2 ideas with you. First on emerging markets and the second on Latin America. It's the South Summit, and this is the panel, one of the panels on emerging markets on Latin America. We will be talking about Latin America. What is amazing with emerging markets, for the ones that they think that we are talking about low-cost economies, commodities, etc., I hope that you will see a different flavor also coming from Latin America. But I want to share with you 2-3 surprising facts. First, when we talk about home runs in the industry of venture capital, we like to talk about home runs. Probably one of the biggest home run in the world is not in California, it's not Sequoia or a VC in California, but probably it's emerging market VC. So this is a VC that invested 40 million in a company that now the stake that they have is worth 40 billion. The VC is the investment arm of Naspers from South Africa. And the company is Tencent. This is probably one of the biggest home runs in the recent history. So emerging markets are there. Naspers is very interesting. Bedy, you know them because they have been very active in Brazil, in Russia. So it's typically the type of investors that are under the radar screens of Europeans or Americans, very active in emerging markets. They come from emerging markets and they are very active in emerging markets. And obviously the Alibaba flotation IPO of this year puts again emerging markets in the scene. We will be talking about Latin America, probably to share also some surprising facts about Latin America. Last example on emerging markets, if you take South Korea, a company like Samsung is already the first provider in the world of devices, ahead of any US company, any European company, and they simply invest in R&D more than Spain, just to put in balance of what we are talking. The second comment is to talk about Latin America 3.0. So what is going on in Latin America? And this is what the panel is about. So we will have views on Brazil, on Mexico, on Colombia, all the region with the panelists. But maybe it's not very well known. There's already startups or ex-startups from Latin America that are listed in the NASDAQ. 2 of them are from Argentina, the country of Marta. She will tell us more about the ecosystem there and in the southern cone and in other areas. And the same, you have in Brazil funds of 100 million that are already operational and operating, or VCs from Europe and the US that are looking to the region. But my last words on this second comment is about Spain and Latin America. Because we have in Spain a very special relation with Latin America and Latin America with Spain. The story is well known. A lot of big companies, TELEFONICA is among one of them. TELEFONICA is simply the largest foreign direct investor over the last decade in Latin America, ahead of Thyssen, ahead of BHP Billiton, ahead of many, many companies. And betting also in a region that might look more 3.0. Here I won't develop on the examples that we will have, but maybe we can think also about Latin America as a type of hub, or Spain as a type of hub between Latin America and Europe, Europe and Latin America. And maybe we can think that Latin American startups, they can use Madrid or Barcelona as an entry hub for Europe, and vice versa. Maybe German or Swedish startups, they can use also Spain as an entry point to Latin America. By the way, it's what some banks are already doing. BBVA and Santander is taking and investing in Swedish or German startups in fintech, and they are scaling up in Latin America because of the muscle and the networks that they have. But the relation goes beyond that. Maybe you don't know, you will listen to one of them in this Spain startup, but some of the most amazing entrepreneurs here in Spain are from Latin America. And I will give you two names. One, you will listen to him in a couple of hours, I think. It's Martín Varsarsky, that is the founder of Jastel, which is now in the process of being bought by a foreign operator. And the other one is a startup called eDreams or Digeo that they just listed this year in the stock exchange. And it's interesting because the two founders are Mexicans. So they choose, in this case, Barcelona to headquarter that company. And by the way, it's a 4 billion income company. For the ones that are in the startup world, you know that there's very, very few startups from Europe that cross the 1 billion of income. So one of them is located in this country. I end with this very brief introduction and start the tour in Latin America. We'll start with Marta. Marta is the co-founder and the executive director of NXTP Labs, which is an early-stage investment fund. She will explain a bit more about the NXTP Labs. They are in Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, Colombia, and Mexico. So you are coming from far away. Welcome to Madrid. And maybe, Marta, explain more your own venture in startups and investments, why you are landing here, and what you are doing with NXTP.
Okay, thank you very much for all of you. First of all, I want to say thank you for the organization to invite me here and share the panel with all of you. NXTP Lab, as you said, is a seed fund accelerator. We put focus on startup based on digital technology that are looking for an opportunity in Latin America. Is not only exclusive for people from Latin America, founder from Latin America. We have a startup with founder for different countries, existing countries across the world. Up to now, we invest in more than 150 companies. 70% of these companies receive raise capital for other venture capital or family office. And we have 5 or 6, now 6 exits.
And you told me that you could also invest in, let's say, European, Spanish startups that are looking to land and expand towards Latin America. That's let's say, also the value proposal.
Yes, our main focus is the startup that want to look for opportunity in Latin America. Mm-hmm. It's not important the country where the people is or where the startup was funding, okay? We have, for example, a startup from Spain, from different countries, Italy, or United States, Brazil, Colombia, wherever. The important thing is we are looking for Latin American opportunities. And on the other hand, we are looking for startup funding for founders, women and men, because we consider that when the startup has a different sex, is more important than when they are only one sex.
Well, you precisely asked me to ask a question about women entrepreneurship in Latin America. You are very involved also in an endeavor with female entrepreneurs. What you can share with us about women entrepreneurs in Latin America? In Spain, by the way, one of the first investment of Intel Capital in this country ever, they invested during 20 years in 1,000 startups, and when they invested 2 years ago in Spain, it was a female founder.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, as Bedy, because we share the passion for women entrepreneurs, we are working very hard with the DBI in order to support the women entrepreneur. And this is the reason why we are preparing a big event in Miami on 12th of December. That is the only event that the women can make a pitch, because in general it's the men that prepare the pitch or do the pitch in front of investor. And we wait female with different countries across the world in order to share experience, in order to make a big networking, because it's so important for us. And we are expecting to receive or to create or support the women like the founder of Mercado Libre in Latin America.
And could you give us examples of women that created startups that you are supporting? I mean, what you are doing with them already?
Well, in fact, in our portfolio, we have a good women entrepreneurs. One of them is a founder of Solver. Solver is a platform for where you can find people that work in your house for cleaning or something. And Cecilia now is invest for 500 too. And she expand the business in Argentina and in Mexico, and is looking to expand the business in Brazil too. And well, we have a lot of women really good.
So maybe you can organize also an event in Madrid in the future, not
Yes,
in
of course.
Miami. So
Why not?
Okay.
Why not? Yeah.
Tell me about the ecosystems that you are following. You are obviously in Argentina, in Chile, in Uruguay, in the Southern Cone, in Colombia, Brazil, and Mexico. Maybe we could start about the Southern Cone, that you explain a bit how you see the changes, let's say, over the last 5 years. And as I was saying, there's even startups from Argentina now listed in the NASDAQ, two of them, so which is interesting. It was not the case 20 years ago, of course. So Latin America is there. Can you explain a bit how you see the changes over the last 5-6 years?
Okay. When we started 4 years ago, really the ecosystem was doesn't exist practically in Argentina, Uruguay, or maybe Chile was the most developed market, country developed. But now there is a lot of good news. First of all, I think the institutional governments are really committed in order to support the entrepreneur ecosystems. Now we have Argentina, Colombia, and all the countries that you mentioned that have money in order to give to the entrepreneur or the companies like us, accelerator or incubator, in order to support the cost of the operation and make more activity from the ecosystem. The other good news is we have the Latin America entrepreneurs have a great workability. They work so hard in order to improve day by day. The projects are improving now. 5 years ago, really, we have a lot of projects, but projects only focusing in one country. Now we need entrepreneur and a startup that think at global level. Okay, we need companies that sell product across the world, not only for one country, not only for Argentina, Colombia, wherever. The other good news is, well, the clear, well, no good news, sorry. The bad news is angel investor, venture capital are not so active in the digital, in the technology and digital area, are more comfortable investment in bienes raíces, in
real estate.
Real estate, sorry. And the other thing that we need to improve in Latin America is the marriage between the science and the business. Thinking in science and business in Latin America is bad word. Examples like Yusum in Israel, for example, that is a company that the aim is to sell what the science are doing in order the entrepreneur take the product and make a business doesn't exist up to now.
We will continue
Okay.
after, if we have more time, we will follow with going north. So we are going to Brazil. I met Bedy was 6-8 months ago. She loves Spain. It's I mean, as frequently as you can come, you are coming here. Bedy is very active. Maybe you will tell more because obviously here you are as 500 startups. You know very well the ecosystem in Brazil, but also in the US. So maybe tell us a bit more about you, and after we will move to your views on the Brazilian ecosystem compared with the US or Brazilian only.
Sure. So a little bit of context about 500 startups. We invested now 850 companies. So that's over 4 years. So we're super active investor around the world. Around 25% of our portfolio are international. So when you were opening, you were talking about emerging economies, international. That's definitely within our focus. And out of that pocket, we have about 10% of the portfolio. It's Latin America, sort of including Spain. We have 7 investments here in Spain. And the general thesis is we deploy early stage capital, sort of similar to what angel investors normally do. So it's 50, 100K first check, and then we do follow-on checks. We probably co-invested with most of the venture capital, both in the US and outside of the US too. So we have about 115 million under management. We're on Fund 3. And a lot of our investors to the fund are, for instance, you were mentioning like BBVA sort of is one of our investors, and we have a lot of relationship just in general with corporates. We have a lot of relationship, of course, with other co-investors and our portfolio companies. And quite specifically, as we were talking about like my connection to Brazil. I'm Chinese Brazilian. I was born and raised in Brazil, and the past 5 years I've been working a lot on building the ecosystem there. When you compare, I've been living 10 years in the Bay Area. When you look in the Bay Area, the angel investment, the venture capital, the whole ecosystem is strong. So most people would be able to sort of culturally, it's common to have like launch companies. Like if your company fail, you can come back and do another company. For Latin America, especially Brazil, it's hard for people to go through that mindset. So a lot of building Brazil Innovators, which was an organization that started, was to really sort of establish the bridge between Brazil and change the mindset of entrepreneurship and digital and innovation sort of in connection to the Valley. So that's the context both for 500 startups and my connection to Brazil. So I split my time between the Valley, Brazil, and some other places in the world, and luckily in Spain too.
Maybe you can share with us, because I know you have a lot of data examples of how the ecosystem in Brazil changed over the last, since 2010, to put just a reference point. What is going on? Because maybe we are not all aware of Peixe Urbano, many companies that are growing in Brazil. Some are very surprising. And also the venture activity is strengthening. Even maybe if it's slowing a bit down with the GDP right now, but it's very vivid. Can you tell us a bit more about that with examples, some facts and examples maybe? So to give a flavor of what is going on in Brazil.
Sure. The sort of cycle for startups to maybe like since they start until they have an exit, I would say probably the time frames between 7 and 10 years. And what we ended up seeing in Brazil ecosystem is you have a wave of people who get like all of a sudden really interested, and a lot of startups sort of get founded, get investment, and sort of needs sort of 7 to 10 years to move to an exit. So the first wave that's relevant to look at, it's the 99 wave. That was when the sort of whole internet wave started. And you have companies such as Buscapé or like Movili that ended up being relevant exits for a lot of investors that were there. But when you go through after like 2002 to 2010 in terms of investments, it really slowed down. Like all of a sudden, like people, the exit didn't happen, but people haven't like gone back to do more investment. There was a little bit of the after bubble crisis of 2002. 2010, when you mentioned, there were several things that happened between 2008 and 2010 that was definitely Facebook, IPO, also Buscapé was one of Brazil's relevant exit. They exited at $400 million. All of the sudden, everyone got super excited about Brazil again. So from, I would say, a lot of startups, given like the Peixe Urbano, the Groupon sort of model, about 1,500 startups decided they want to do a Groupon. So they were like aggregator of Groupon's startups. So it became all of a sudden like no one really wanted to do startup, and then you move to like a new movement that got started in 2009, and we're sort of riding that momentum of a lot of interest. In terms of venture capital, there are 5, I would say, active VC on early stage. Those are mostly Series A investors, and that's definitely developing. So the angel investor network and the angel are investing more and more, and then you have the VC doing follow-on. Private equity is very active. They're probably at some point they're going to move down, or the Series A investors are going to move up, so that the whole ecosystem for investment can develop. So we are definitely riding like a very nice wave from 2009. Although there, of course, from all different, like between election, economy, and expectation of economy in the US getting a lot better, a lot of investors ended up going back to US, but we still, when you look at the foundation, you're saying like Brazil has 100 million internet users. That becomes a really important foundation for companies, for founders who wants to build a startup in Brazil.
And Marta was commenting about the relevance of governments, which is, by the way, a myth when we think that Silicon Valley was created by spontaneous, the invisible hand. In fact, obviously, the US military ecosystem was very, very important, as the same in Israel. In Latin America, there's not the military push, but has been since 2010. By the way, with the Chileans maybe starting.
Startup Chile.
They start with Startup Chile, and after every country wanted to have his startup whatever. Peru and Brazil. So can you tell us a bit more about this activity? And I will relate it with, obviously, which is the burning question that you, as a Brazilian you will have here in Europe, is not your thoughts on the second round of elections, but more your thoughts on if innovation, technology, entrepreneurship, startups is or not in the agenda in Brazil, has been in the agenda of the candidates. Probably not, probably yes. You will tell us, and what you are missing or here.
Yeah, definitely there's a momentum, like the good news, like Marta was saying, there's a momentum for the feeling that startup innovation, it's relevant. I think 5 years ago, it wasn't the same conversation. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, whether you're in Spain, in Brazil. So there's a general overall interest for innovation and technology. Brazil launched the Brazil Startup Program too, and the way they do it, it's different from, for instance, you mentioned Startup Chile. They run the accelerator program themselves. In Brazil, they empower other 10, 20 accelerators to run the operation. So they're incentivizing the private sector to have more accelerators into the ecosystem. The way I sort of look at it, it's depends, like that program is run by the Ministry of Science and Technology. And as we move forward, I think it's important to sort of, beyond being on science and technology, be on top of like the government agenda. But in general, it is. I think it's just like the relevancy compared to rest of the priorities that are there. But as sort of on the micro level where we are as investors, the good news is it seems that there's an open channel to talk to policymakers. And I think that's the relevant. It's not where they are, it's whether they're willing to listen to whether it's the legislation that is not working very well, or the investment scene that has a lot of barriers from the government bureaucracy perspective, I think that that's the part that we should be aiming. Like, do we have a channel to talk to them? And I believe that the answer to Brazil is yes. Of course, there's an election and there's a change of government. So every time, it's incredible when you look at emerging economies. It's sometimes different in the US, especially in the Bay Area. Like when you think about startups, you're almost like in a bubble. It doesn't matter who runs the government or not in the government. But in Brazil, the sentiment for investment, the sentiment to do business, the sentiment to do a lot of things depends on who's going to win the election. So there's a lot of holding, and you lose the momentum of whether you're riding up or riding down. Since I believe we're riding up, I'd rather keep the momentum going.
Okay, Bedy, thank you. We will continue the trip. I will go with Gonzalo, and after Diego. Gonzalo, he's involved in Open Future of Telefonica, which is the initiative for entrepreneurship, startups, and many other things. Maybe, Gonzalo, can you tell us more about, we will talk about the ecosystems after, but my first question is about Open Future, if you can present the initiative in Europe and in Latin America.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. Great to be here with you, Javier. And thanks, Maria, for inviting us again. Open Future in Telefonica, we started a long time ago working with entrepreneurship, innovation. We're a telco company, so more than 20 years ago, and this morning, Santiago Fernandez, when I was talking about that, we have tried many things, and we're kind of entrepreneurial on that. We tried many things. And at the end, we decided that we need to create a new model, okay? WAYRA, as you know, was born 3 years ago. We have learned a lot in terms of accelerating businesses and finding the talent in Latin America and also in Europe. But now we believe it's the time to do something else, something greater, okay? And that is why we have developed Telefonica Open Future. What is this? This is what we decided to do is we were clear that in Telefonica we had many initiatives that were created to support entrepreneurship, innovation, and we decided to create a program to put them all together. And this has an incredible effect in terms of the startups and the funders. Having all this, the small but intense experience that we had in WAYRA over these 3 years, we realized that sometimes people talk about the valley of death, talking about the investment that you need, Series A that you need after you come out of an accelerator like WAYRA, for example. We believe that the valley of death is in many places, okay? And it doesn't necessarily have to deal with just with money, okay? Probably the valley of death is first in education, or finding the correct mentor, or finding a physical space to work, or finding the correct outside partner to move your business up, or finding money after you're being helping accelerator like WAYRA. And we realized that we have all these tools in Telefonica. That's why we have projects like Talentum that you know really well. We have the Think Big program that are devoted, both programs devoted to help young people to start their businesses. We find the best talent there and we start helping them out. We are going to create co-working spaces and crowd-working spaces that we have already created, for example, here in Spain, and there are some in Latin America too, to help those young people to start working in places where they can get, through an online platform, all the support they need to keep on growing. Then is, of course, WAYRA. The best players will go to WAYRA, and then after WAYRA, we have all the investment tools that the startups will need in order to succeed. So basically, as we see it, our vision is to find a very young, talented guy with a project, and Telefonica Open Future has to be capable of helping him out until he reaches an IPO in the NASDAQ. And that is all the steps that we believe that Telefonica can help with.
Maybe you can give also a flavor of the changes. In your case, it's pretty unique because you follow Europe. There's accelerators around Europe, activity of Open Future in Europe, and accelerators also in Latin America. When it was around 2010, it's the same question that I made for Marta and Bedy. We were like the Mohicans, the ones believing that something was big could be cooked in Latin America. And so you have been witnessing that those changes in many, many countries. And obviously on top of that, you can compare with what is going on in Europe and vice versa. So what has been the most surprising facts or impressions that you got from these 4 years, 3-4 years? WAYRA was 3 years ago, but Telefonica started even before.
Well, I think we were impressed. We were impressed by the talent. WAYRA and Telefonica Open Future is based on finding the correct talent. We were sure that there was a lot of talent in Latin America, and after 3 years running this, we realized that we were correct, fortunately for us. What is happening in the ecosystem is also important. When we got there, as Marta was mentioning before, the ecosystems were not well developed. They were starting to, many countries were starting to help startups and entrepreneurs. We believe in these 3 years that we have been in the region, we believe that many efforts have been made. This morning we were hearing that the important thing is the word ecosystem. Okay, this is not about just Telefonica or the government or the universities or the business schools. This is about a joint effort by everyone. That's why in Open Future we believe that it's open. No? The word says open. It's open for everyone that wants to join us and help all this innovation, all these startups to grow and succeed.
Maybe could you give us some numbers? I mean, so that we understand the size of the exercise.
Well,
because we tend always to look at the US where big numbers. Here you have also some big numbers to show.
We
right now, WAYRA as an academy is present in 12 countries. We have 14 academies. What we have done, we are also present through Telefonica Open Future has signed an agreement with an accelerator in China, which brings a huge opportunity for European and Latin American startups. You were mentioning before that we can become Spain can become a door for Latin America, but now what we're doing is becoming a link with China. And I know you like that topic too. In the past weeks, we've seen a startup that started in a co-working, Open Future co-working space in Santiago de Chile, that joined WAYRA after that got invested by WAYRA, by Telefonica Open Future, and now we took the startup to China to see if we could get some commercial agreements with people there, and the good news is that they're doing great, and probably they're going to get investment from Chinese investors. So the model is working, okay? So that's very important. Right now we have invested up to date in 410 startups worldwide. And the good news is that they're getting a lot of traction, a lot of attention from outside investors, and that the model works. To be honest, 3 years ago, when we started, it was difficult to envision what was going to happen, and you were there at the beginning too. And the good news is that it's happening, and we're bringing a lot of value for startups in Latin America, but in other places in the world. You must take into account that also Latin America, sometimes people, and you were talking about that, sometimes people think that in Latin America you need to find copycats that come from other places.
It's not the case.
It's probably it's good too. I mean, because founders and entrepreneurs must do whatever they think is good for the business. But we also think that there is a huge opportunity for products and services that are devoted to Latin America. I mean, you must take into account that this is 100 million or 700 million people that live there. So we believe there is a huge opportunity for projects that are devoted for Latin America. So we always say that the rules are not written yet. And specifically in Latin America, we believe the rules are not written yet.
Can you tell a bit more on this China partnership? Because obviously the Chinese equation for Latin America is very important, economically speaking. So the idea is to source in China, to source in Latin America and Europe for China,
both ways.
Exactly.
Both
so
ways.
explain a little bit
what
more
we have done is
the model.
Yeah, we signed an agreement with it's a three-party agreement. Okay, we signed an agreement as Telefonica Open Future with China Unicom and also with BIV, which is the accelerator of Tsinghua University, which is like the MIT there in China. What we do is basically we share deal flow. Okay. And we bring commercial opportunities for WAYRA startups or Telefonica Open Future startups in China, and we bring Chinese startups to Europe and Latin America, and it's working really, really well. This is not only about investment, it's also about commercial agreements. It's also about sharing best practices, and we signed the agreement, I think it was in February, and we have very good news about it. We thought it was going to take some time, the language, the culture, but there is no language or no cultural differences for startups. It's working really, really well.
Okay. I will continue with Diego. So Diego is Serebrisky, is the founder of and partner of ALTA Ventures. Maybe you can explain a bit more what you are doing. You are not only a venture fund, also in growth investment stages. So explain a bit more, and if I understood well, focus above all in Mexico and Colombia, maybe in other countries. You are also doing investments in the Southern Cone and so on. So explain a bit more, Diego, who you are, what you are doing.
Sure. Well, we are a venture fund, but we do multi-stage investments. So our main focus is what we call venture, the typical Series A, with tickets between $1 to $4 million. We also do deals that are more growth equity, companies that are more mature but still has, very rapid growth trajectories. And we have also done some seed deals where we invest below, 1 million, but we identify teams that we think are really good, that have really good ideas, and we help them, and hopefully they will get to the point where we can invest more kind of for the venture Series A that we want to be. We have a kind of a main focus in Mexico, where the fund is originally from, but we are investing throughout Latin America. We have invested in companies from Argentina, Colombia. We have looked at Chile, Peru. Probably Brazil is the country where we look less. And we have invested in companies in the US that have a Latin American link, where we see the opportunity of bringing, and something that we have seen, and probably the same thing happening in Spain, is that we see teams in the US developing solutions to problems that are bigger in Latin America than in the US. And let me give you an example. We invested in a company that has a digital polygraph, essentially a detector and to detect lies, but within a digital way. That business doesn't really have a market in the US because of regulation. It's a huge market in emerging markets.
And it's a US-based startup in this case.
That company is based in the US.
In the US.
But we invested because
you saw
they see the opportunity to sell really in Latin America.
Okay.
So we try to do that, identify technologies outside the region where they have a huge opportunity in the Latin American region.
So it could include also European, Spanish-based startups?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We can do that, and in fact, from the amount of emails I got, in the last 2 days from entrepreneurs attending this conference, there is a lot of interest from especially Spanish entrepreneurs to move into Latin America. So I think, as
we like
we were
Latin
saying
America.
here, it's a market of 700 million people. It's very large with a lot of problems. So there is a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs with good solutions to those problems.
And Diego, tell us a bit more about the ecosystem in Mexico and Colombia, the changes that you have been witnessing. Also the same question that for Marta, Bedy and Gonzalo since 2010. How you see this evolving, particularly in Mexico and Colombia, which I understand is the ones that you know more or you are more active?
Well, I think it has been a huge change in these last 3-4 years. Essentially, I think they didn't exist like an ecosystem. What we had before is entrepreneurs that decided to start projects, and some of them were very successful. But really now there is an idea that the ecosystem needs to have different players. On one side, you have the government that is supporting different programs. And in the case of Mexico, the new government that started 2 years ago, they have choose entrepreneurship as one of their kind of main actions to develop the economy. So they are supporting in many ways the development of this ecosystem. And that goes into, from putting money directly into startups to support, accelerators, incubators, and I think, NXTP, maybe the guys from WAYRA have received that support. And lately, one of the things they have done is they are helping develop the venture capital industry. I think one of the weak links in the region is that there might not be enough financing at the different stages that a startup will need.
Which is what Bedy and Marta also covered.
Yeah, so you have a very early culture of angel investment, but we need to develop more people that are willing to invest, especially in digital, in IT, in technology-related startups. Then you have kind of the accelerators, which probably is one of the kind of the stages that is more developed, and my colleagues have done an amazing job there. Then you have the kind of the seed stage, where there were really very few funds doing that, and then more kind of Series A, where funds like us, we were active, and probably we need to have more. And for example, in Mexico, in the last year, the government has assigned money to 26 new funds that are going to be in the seed stage. So suddenly you are going to see a lot of, capital available for startups, and that in fact could be a huge opportunity for Spanish or European startups that wants to move to Mexico to develop a market there. They will have resources available to do that.
And maybe one question more on the limited partners, because it's the other side of the coin. So, and this is also for Bedy and Marta, and obviously Gonzalo, if you want to jump. How do you see these limited partners in your cases? Bedy, you mentioned a bank. So usually you see more interest from the family offices. Institutionals, are they active or not? Corporates or other type of investors? Because in the end, it looks like one of the big bottlenecks and is not specific to Latin America. I mean, we share it in continental Europe, the same issue, which goes to your second point, that there's not enough growth stages vehicles. Yeah. So you get stuck in the early stages. Maybe you can do a VC round. More and more, by the way, VC rounds are done outside the region. So tell us a bit more about the evolution or no evolution of the LPs.
Yeah, I think that the investors that invest in funds, it's not a large universe of investors. Essentially today you have I would think two main players. You have multilateral investors, and we're talking, entities like IFC, CAF, which is a Corporación Andina de Fomento. You have the BID, the Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo. These guys are very active, and they do have a mandate to help develop, the entrepreneurial ecosystem and the venture capital industry throughout the region. And they are very active, supporting a number of funds there, including ours. And that is a kind of one important type of investor. The other probably is the family offices in the region that, are cautious about getting into early stage investment, but they are starting to do it, and they see the opportunity, by putting small tickets into different funds at different stages. They are getting exposure to what is going on in the region. A lot of them, they're doing, of course, for the financial returns, but I think they're many families, and we see that in Mexico, and we have around 30 families investing in our fund, most of them from Mexico. They see that as a way to contributing back to, the countries where they have been successful. So they want to help entrepreneurs develop new things. And the last one that is starting to emerge is what they call, funds of funds, that they will get into venture capital as a way of, diversifying, the returns that they can generate for their own clients.
So maybe
Besides that, there aren't too many more.
Okay, we have 1 minute now, so Bedy and Marta and Gonzalo, but maybe if you allow me, Gonzalo, with Bedy and Marta first, very quickly. So your view on that, very shortly.
So because we're global, so we have a lot of investors that are successful tech founders that want to be supportive, so that's a piece of it. And then the larger checks comes in for corporate for us who are looking for innovation because we invest in a large portfolio. I would say those are the two main ones, institutional fund of funds, and they are still sort of developing and understanding what we're doing. So that's probably a longer term conversation.
Marta?
In the case of NXTP Labs, more of our investors are angel investors and institutionals, like Bedy that mentioned Diego in ADEM in Mexico and Corfo in Chile. But the investor for our companies are angel investor and venture capital from Latin America or from United States and Europe.
Okay, so we are just time over, so we are finishing here. I want to thank very much Bedy, Marta, Diego, and Gonzalo. Just 10 seconds to maybe follow the conversation in other occasions. All of us that we are here, we are in Twitter, LinkedIn, so you can follow the ones that you want. But I want to add something on another emerging market, because I won't have another chance during those days, which is Spain. Spain is an ex-emerging market, technically speaking. It was in the 70s till the 80s. Now it's not anymore, it's an OECD country, but from the point of view of venture and startups, we are also like the Latins, the southern people. But the ecosystems have been changing a lot, and I think is what we try to share with Latin America. I just want to give you 2-3 data on Spain. Over the last 3 months, so it's very recently, you had a startup called Skytel that raised more than 100 million euros, mostly in the US, because of the issue of growth capital. But now you have more and more Spanish startups that are able to do it. Big rounds, I saw the guys from Job and Talent around, also an amazing round that they did. Cantox, it was a foreign round, so you have more and more. And what is also very good, as in Latin America, you see more and more exits. Just yesterday, it was announced that a Japanese firm, Next, bought for 80 million Trovit, a Spanish startup created 6 years ago. So I think that we are in the right direction also with Spain startup. And to do it here, bullfighting arena, that the Latins, we have duende, as we say in Spain. Thank you very much.
Thank you.